Hello everyone, I hope you're having a great day. In this video I'll be showing you the most overpowered Tactician party build in Baldur's Gate 3. Honor mode makes some change to different class features, abilities, and spells, so we'll be taking advantage of all those things in this video. The most notable are the changes to haste and extra attacks, as well as the Warlock's Pact of the Blade extra attack. So in this video I'll be taking you through 4 different builds, as well as the equipment to use for all of them, all through Acts 1, 2, and 3. In addition, I'll show off combat and how to utilize these builds to their maximum potential. And our first build will be the Paladin mixed with the Warlock. This is extremely powerful all throughout the game, and in Tactician mode we can use the extra attack from the Paladin and stack it with the extra attack from the Pact of the Blade, making it an extremely powerful tanky character that's also a protector, gets a great spell list, and of course Divine Smite for burst damage. Now, you may run through spell slots quickly, but consider this. If you were to stretch your spell slots out over 3 turns, that's damage that you could have done on turn 1 that's going to end up keeping creatures alive that'll damage your team. We want to protect them to our best ability, so that's with burst damage. So, we'll be first starting off as a Paladin. I personally really like the Oath of Vengeance, as this gives you coverage over some of your other spells that you could take from the Warlock. But the Oath of the Crown is also pretty fun because they can add the proficiency bonus to attack rolls. So if you have someone in your team that's missing their attacks, this can help boost it up. Although I do prefer the Oath of Vengeance, and you can daze targets, which gives the target disadvantage on wisdom saves, so you can hit command and hold person a little bit more easily. Now for our ability score, we're actually going to build heavily around our strength, because with the new Hexblade Warlock, you can use charisma for all your attack rolls. Strength is far worse than dexterity, because if we have 16 dexterity, that's an automatic +3 to our initiative. And the initiative die in Baldur's Gate 3 is a D4, huge boost. I also like to run at least 14 Constitution, and then you can put the rest of your points into it, Wisdom and Intelligence. Wisdom being better for saves, as a Wisdom save is extremely important. That's also why we're starting with the Paladin, is they get proficiency in Wisdom saves, so things like Command and Hold Person again. If you're going to start this from level 1 and you're using a 2-handed weapon, then go with higher strength. But if you're going to start this from when you can use the Charisma for your weapon scaling, then we're going to go higher into our Charisma. Alternatively, you can also use the Hag's Hair and boost up your Charisma to 17 there, and then have that sit like that. This is ideal if you're going to use the Hag's Hair on yourself. Just remember the Paladin will lose their oath, especially Vengeance, if you take the Hag's Hair, but that would be min-maxing the build. Now level 2 gives us exactly what we're looking for with our Divine Smite, which adds additional radiant damage onto our attacks. And we also get to take a fighting style. Now defense for +1 armor class is never a bad idea. However, a great weapon fighting to reroll damage die is really good, especially since we got a lot of extra damage die that we can add with our attacks. So this one, especially if you want to use a 2-handed weapon, is going to be ideal. If you want to use a shield, I'd actually recommend using defense, but we're going to go with a great weapon fighting, as this is a very high burst damage class. And the nice thing is a 2-handed weapon can use charisma too. Now, we want to have command, extremely powerful spell for a variety of reasons, which you'll see. And these smites are okay to have. Thunder Smite can give you a pushback occasionally. It's not going to be ideal. I'd recommend having the Bless spell though, because having Bless up is much more impactful, and command doesn't interact with Bless, so you can go ahead with spells like this. Divine Favor can also give you additional damage, and Shield of Faith is just a good one to give that +2 to armor class. And we also get the very powerful Vow of Enmity here, so it's actually kind of weird. You can apply this on your own character. This gives you 10 turns of advantage on attack rolls, so you're very likely to hit your shots. Very powerful use of your Channel Oath charge. I wouldn't even recommend Abjure Enemy that much. And we also get Hunter's Mark, so you can give yourself advantage, also apply additional 1d6 damage every time you attack a target, and you attack 3 times with the Warlock, so very powerful boost to overall damage output. I guess we'll take the other smite here. The Paladin doesn't really care about their own spells outside of command. You really want those divines. You want it for Divine Smite. Level 4 here gives us our first feat. Now, if you're the face of the party, you could go with the actor feat, because proficiency bonus added doubled for deception and performance checks is pretty nice if you want to focus on deception. But around this point, you'll be getting the Hag's Hair, so you can take your charisma up to 18. And I would personally recommend having Alert. The D4 initiative die, again, having a +5 bonus means you're likely to go first. It's great to have your entire team going first, in all honesty, because, again, the burst damage that you can put out is going to reduce the amount of damage your team takes. So we want to get going first, especially with an attacker that's got 3 attacks per action. Level 5 is our first big power spike, because not only we get extra attack here, we also get the Hold Person here, so you can hold enemies still, free critical hits, smites add additional damage dies on their smites and their weapon damage, it's massive, and Misty Step for the extra mobility. We then get access to level 2 spells. Branding Smite's an okay choice, and I guess 8 if you really wanted it, but we're using Divine Smite. Aura of Protection will add our charisma modifier to saving throws in a 3-meter radius. It's not very large. You do want this, but I actually prefer, again, to have that Warlock and get the charisma scaling your weapon as soon as possible. The nice thing about the Warlock as well is you get access to the 2 best cantrips in the game. So you get Eldritch Blast and Booming Blade, which is a nice boost to our overall damage because it now does an extra 1d8 of thunder damage. And this is going to help us conserve our spell slots, which we're burning through. Because you can do it with 1 action, Booming Blade, and then attack again with a smite and again with a smite, and that's 1 action. Pretty powerful. I would recommend always having shield because this is the only way to give ourselves an increase to our armor class. It does burn through our spell slots quickly, but a +5 to armor class is huge, especially when we have level 1 spell slots from the Paladin. Hex is another good choice, or Hellish Rebuke. Hellish Rebuke will give you the most amount of damage possible, but it also burns through your spell slots quickly too. And we do get them back on short rest, and I would recommend having a Bard on the team. You can go crazy and take a Bard lock as well, a Bard and a Warlock. Very crazy synergy there, but I'm not going to for the purpose of this. Hex, Armor of Agathis, I guess, is another good spell, or Arms of Hadar. We really just want to use Divine Smite. Now we get our Eldritch Invocations level 2. Devil's Sight is going to be the best choice here, because if you're in a really bad position, you can just shoot an arrow of darkness, run to the darkness, and you're going to be more safe than you normally would be. Agonizing Blast will add a charisma modifier to your Eldritch Blast and Repelling Blast. You can take off Devil's Sight and use Agonizing Blast if you don't like darkness, but darkness is really good, so we want to have at least someone that can utilize it. Level 3 Pack Boon, we're going to take back to the Blade. If you don't take this, you don't get the extra attack stacking. This is the only way to get that, so we're going to take that. Our next level spell is, we already have Hold Person and Misty Step, which are 2 spells that we want to take. Darkness can be a good one since we have Devil's Sight. I don't want to say Shadow Blade, but Shadow Blade is the best choice here. And we also got Mirror Image, which can increase your armor class by 9, which is really nice. If you don't want to take Shadow Blade or Darkness, take Mirror Image or Cloud of Daggers. But Darkness and Shadow Blade are the 2 best choices here, just hands down. Darkness is extremely overpowered, and you can hide out in it, and Darkness will power up Shadow Blade. Very powerful. Now for our next cantrip, I like to take Mage Hand, because you can use Mage Hand to throw water bottles or healing potions. You can also use Minor Illusion to group enemies together and drop a fireball on them, but someone else on the team can do that. If you're the face of the party, take Friends. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead here with Darkness, or, again, Mirror Image and Cloud of Daggers. Even Crown of Madness is another good choice, too. And for our feat here, so we're likely going to have our Charisma all the way up to 20 now, because the hag's here. But if you don't, again, use the previous stat spread. But level 5. Now, at level 10, we get the extra attack before the fighter gets at level 11. This is why it's so overpowered. And then you can also add your Charisma modifier to Eldritch Blast and go ahead with things like Hunger of Hadar. But we also get Counterspell, and I actually think that Counterspell might be the move here because this gives us a lot of extra survivability for our team. Reducing the amount of spells and commands and hold persons and fireball, things like that are really nice to be able to stop. So we're going to go with that. Hunger of Hadar is a good choice though, but we can always take that at our next level. And actually Darkness ends up being a bit more impactful for us. Now at this level we get the Accursed Spectre, which if you have Call the Weak on, it's not going to trigger your Accursed Spectre. So just a heads up on that. If you kill the target without using Call the Weak, it'll still apply it, but it is a little bit buggy with that. We also then can take our Hunger of Hadar there, which is obviously a very powerful spell. And then we're going to go, you can take another level here and you get Blight or the Staggering Smite, which is actually kind of bursty in damage. But I think the best choice is the Aura of Protection. It'll be a +5 to saving throws. And then we also can we do have to rearrange your spells if you multi-class back into a character. So that's why they're all loose and messed up like that. But then you can go ahead and just reapply them like that. Now, as far as a Hexblade Warlock, you always want to make sure that you have your buffs applied. The Aura of Protection, don't forget to put that on. Now, just be mindful that the area of the protection is very small. So you can see there Shadowheart is in the Aura of Protection. It's listed below her name. Now she's not. So that's the range that you have. It's not very large, so just be mindful of that. You also want to make sure you use your Bind Hex weapon. And this is dependent on our weapon that we want to use. I really like the Sword of Chaos if you're in the late game because this will heal you. You can further pair with the Periapta Wound Closure, which will give you healing. So 6 healing per attack, so you can get 18 health back per action. This makes you pretty much mortal paired with that weapon, so I'd actually recommend those two together. I'm going to use the Amulet of Greater Health just to maximize our overall efficiency there with 142 health, but you can easily enough swap that out if you're going to want your healing to be high. I would recommend actually going with a little higher of Constitution if that's the case. But now we also got other choices for weapons. The Act 1 weapon I would actually recommend is Faller Alluve, because this will allow you to do the shrieking or singing song, so Faller Alluve there. The melody will apply either a boost or a negative to the enemy, and you can deal additional thunder damage on them. Great Act 1 weapon. Otherwise, the Knife of the Undermounted King. I also think that's a good choice that if you want to maximize your pure raw damage, the very best thing you can do is take a Staff of Spell Power and then go ahead and cast yourself Shadow Blade. This is just going to be the most damaging. Make sure it's upcast to level 3 because then it becomes a 3d8. This is the highest damage potential possible from a build like this. So I'm going to use it to show the most OP ability, but I showed you some other weapons there that you can also use. And with this, I would recommend the Sentinel Shield, because with the Sentinel Shield, you can actually get the bonuses to your overall initiative by a +3. You can also do something a little crazy here and add Belm into your offhand, because this gives you the perfectly balanced strike, which is a bonus action attack. So if you actually want a dual wielding Paladin Hexblade Warlock is actually a very crazy combination, because you don't even have to put on a shield. We do have a decent armor class with 21 since we got the armor of persistence on there, although you can boost it up higher if you use like the Helldusk armor. I'm not going to use that for the purpose of this build because I feel it is a bit overkill on something like this, but you can also use that. Now, one of the biggest things for this build is the Helmet of Arcane Acuity or the Gloves of the Battle Mage's Power. This is it's dependent on how you want to go approach this build, because with this, you can get Arcane Acuity from melee attacks, and with the helmet, you get them from weapon attacks. And the reason the weapon attacks is crazy is because Arrow of Many Targets gives you an automatic +10 to your Arcane Acuity. It's crazy. We also get the Deathstalker Mantle there. If you're the Dark Urge, use this. If not, you can go with any of the other cloaks, like Shadeslayer Cloak. Even getting Dominate Person is kind of nice. And the Cloak of Elemental Absorption, or the Cloak of Protection. But if you're the Dark Urge, this is the best choice. Armor Persistence reduces all incoming damage by 2. If you're on an evil playthrough and you can't get this, I would recommend going with the Helldusk Armor or the Dwarven Splint Mail, because the Dwarven Splint Mail is actually pretty underrated. It boosts your Constitution by 2 as well, so it can give you some further survivability if you don't have the Armor Persistence. We also got the Helldusk Gloves here, because I feel like this is the perfect one. It gives additional fire damage on your melee attacks, better spell casting. And then we also got the Evasive Shoes, giving a +1 bonus to your armor class. You can swap that out for like the Stormy Clamor, or early game too. You also have like the Disintegrating Nightwalkers. I also have the Band of the Mystic Scandal for bonus action spell casting, allowing you to cast things like Hold Person and Command with a bonus action. Very overpowered, because then you got options for your bonus action Perfectly Balanced Strike or your bonus action spell. And if you have the Helmet of Grit applied, you can also get an extra bonus action to use for that, or your Perfectly Balanced Strike. Pretty great DPS. Now, one item that actually changes in Honor Mode is the Ring of Elemental Infusion. Booming Blade does not give you that extra 1d4 of damage if you're in Honor Mode, so this will help correct that. I also have the Gaunter Mail there to give ourselves Celestial Haste, which is haste without any restrictions. Whenever you cast this, as long as you hold the concentration, you got that extra attack. That's pretty broken. And next we got our Cleric. Now, I did an Honor Mode build guide for a full party and used Light Cleric, because I think that is the true best. However, we're going to go in Tactician. We can do some crazy burst damage. So I'm going to bring the Tempest Cleric this time around. With the Tempest Cleric, you get the ability to do a reaction attack to do 2 to 16 lightning or thunder damage. We're going to spec heavily around lightning damage because it is extremely powerful in this game. And for the early game, I'd recommend Toll the Dead because it has a much higher hit chance than Sacred Flame. And it's good to have someone with guidance or resistance. And for the choice and ability scores, I'd recommend 16 Wisdom. You can go with a stat spread of something like this. So maxing Wisdom, Constitution of 14 Dexterity. Since we're going to be using this medium armor here, this gives us our maximum possible Dexterity to our armor class. So that works out pretty well there. Level 2 gives us one of the most powerful abilities in this entire game, Destructive Wrath. So whenever you roll lightning or thunder damage, you can use the max roll by applying your Channel Divinity. So if we're sneaky and get a chain lightning from something like the staff here, we can make sure that that 80 damage is guaranteed. What's also crazy is you can use if you have haste on yourself, you can create water, which will double that. So it's a guaranteed 160 damage. And then we can also, it becomes crazy. You're going to see this. I would also recommend having Sanctuary because it works a little bit differently in Tactician mode. Really good spell to have as a bonus action to protect your team. Command is always great to have. Healing Word. Guiding Bolt's all right. We want to create water though, as it's a big component of our build. And then Shield of Faith can just give you some extra survivability in the early game if you don't want to use Sanctuary. Now for our next level spell, we get Gust of Wind and Shatter. Decent options. We also get access to level 2 spells with Hold Person. And I really like Spiritual Weapon. The Maul, in particular, can give the ability to apply Dazed. Again, giving disadvantage on Wisdom saves for Hold Persons and commands. So yeah, we can land our spells really easily if we utilize that. So I'd recommend popping that on there. Aid being another good spell. I'd recommend going into your Cleric spell book, adding Aid whenever you need that extra health on your team, and then removing it. Level 14 gives us our Bursting Sinew there. Then we can take another spell. I'd recommend Aid's pretty good to have, or Bless. And then for our next ability I would recommend either boosting up our wisdom, but since we're going to be a nuke class, alert is sometimes a good option here because the +5 to initiative is actually pretty crazy. And you'll see there is a slight multi-class we can do because some of the best lightning damage we get is call lightning. 30 possible damage, upwards of 60 is not good enough. However, we also get very powerful spell with Spirit Guardians, and we're going to use items that apply extra debuffs to the enemy with Spirit Guardians. Glyph of Warding is another really good lightning damage spell. I guess that's our really best option right now. Level 6 gives us our Thunderbolt Strike. Whenever you deal lightning or thunder to a creature that's larger or smaller, you can push it 3 meters. That's great. Gives us some extra movement around the enemy. We'll also take Mass Healing Word because we can use gloves that'll apply Bless to our entire team. We also get level 7 at level 7 Ice Storm, which is an amazing spell to have for crowd control. And I'd recommend Guardian of Faith. They can be pretty decent if you set them up in the right areas, and that can actually just hit the enemy. But Ice Storm is a great crowd control spell for us because it makes it difficult terrain. Now, Divine Strike Thunder has a really interesting way of applying. We want to use hand crossbows because even if we suck at using the hand crossbow, if you hit, you deal an additional 1d8 of thunder damage. So it's something. And the best part about this is this actually activates our Thunderbolt Strike, which will then push the enemy 5 meters. So a hand crossbow on this build actually works very well. It's kind of an underrated thing. We'll then reapply aid there. And at this point, it's probably best to boost up your wisdom here. We also can benefit from a little of intelligence, but it doesn't make sense to add it here. We can also add in Warcaster, which gives you advantage in saving throws, but we already have a reaction, so that Shocking Grasp is kind of, it's meh. Depends how you want to build it, but I think they go an ability score improvement on either our wisdom and even constitution because we benefit from staying alive. Plain and simple. This is really good. It's up to you between the two stats there. I'm going to go with wisdom for a little bit better spellcasting and resistance to some spells. Level 9 gives us actually a really good crowd control with Insect Plague, and then Destructive Wave, which only gets a 5d6, so it's not a huge boost to damage if we use our Destructive Wrath on it, so I don't recommend it there. Flame Strike's not really a good spell, but it has Flame Strike or Planar Binding. Flame Strike's almost like you're almost better to save your spell slot for Destructive Wrath. Free Divine Intervention, great. We also get Produce Flame, and then for prepared spells, I mean, Revivify can work. If you got the gloves that I have, you also get free Revivify. And Bless, I guess. Bless is always nice to have someone, but we have our Paladin for that. Now, level 11 gives us another really effective spell with Planar Ally and Hero's Feast. With Planar Ally, you can get a Genie, and with the Genie, it's really good because it can push back enemies, it gets thunder damage, and you can intoxicate targets. Level 12 is interesting because I actually believe it's better for us to go ahead and add in the Wizard. The reason why we want to add in the Wizard is because you get some really good cantrips. So we get Mage Hand, which we can use to throw a water bottle so that we set up our double damage on lightning. But the big thing is we're a full spellcaster, so we can learn Chain Lightning now from a scroll. We're not going to have the highest hit chance, but there is ways to boost up our Arcane Acuity, which I can show you here. This also gives us things like Minor Illusion. If you're the face of the party, Friends can be nice too. And then the spells that we're going to want to take, there's nothing that's like super effective here. Grease, Find Familiar, going with the Magic Missile is nice. Chromatic Orb. Shield is actually a good spell. And then Long Strider. But the thing is, we can't really prepare too many of them unless we use the Headband of Intellect. So I guess going with Shield there, because that just gives us an extra defensive option as a reaction. Now, why I consider this to be really good is we get things like Chain Lightning Scrolls, obviously. But we can also learn Conjure Elemental. And the great thing about this is, if we get Conjure Elemental, we can also learn Cone of Cold, which will double the damage with a Water Elemental. But it's just good to have extra summons. And Globe of Invulnerability is probably one of the most powerful damage reduction spells in the game. A Cleric should likely have that as an option. So we can also learn like Artistry of War and things like that. But then with the Circlet of Intelligence, we can add in Shield of Faith, or Shield spell. We got Chain Lightning, we got Globe of Invulnerability, and we can create an Elemental. So that's a pretty stacked lineup. You can also just do the good old-fashioned Find Familiar there. But this is just a great way to be able to boost up your overall output in terms of damage. And then what we can also do with this is we can add in certain things like you can go with the Arcane Battery and give yourself a free Elemental upgrade. What's even crazier is you can take the staff that we use to give ourselves Shadow Blade and then go ahead, giving us our free Myrmidon. The Water Elemental actually got debuffed in patch 8. I would recommend either the Air Myrmidon or if you got a Cold Caster, the Water Elemental. But the Myrmidon is nice because it can stun targets and it kind of works with our lightning. So we can get a free casting of that and then go back and take out our Marka Heshker staff here, which then also has the Kreska's Favor giving us lightning charges. But furthermore, we also get access to Chain Lightning for free. So we got 2 Chain Lightnings here. This one's going to have a low chance of success. This one's got What we want to do though is boost up our arcane acuity. So you can see there we have 18 spell save DC with the wizard and 19 with the cleric. So our wizard's not too bad. We do boost it up with the amulet of devout. If we had the ability to take, if we went a little higher in intelligence, you can take the hat of fire acuity, learn scorching ray, or even just play a light cleric and then cast this, which will give you boosted arcane acuity, which is a lot better, but we can go with this. Thunder damage, there's also the hat of the storm scion's power, which is another option that you can go with. It's kind of similar to the hat of fire acuity, but there's no multi-hit thunder damage spells, but this one's pretty decent as well. The helmet of intellect is early game. If you wanted to go with something different and stick with the cleric, you can go with the hood of the weave late game. I also got the thunder skin cloak, so if a reverberation target attacks the wearer, it can daze them. Again, daze will set up the ability to hit commands and hold persons. We also get the boots of stormy clamor, which will apply reverberation on a condition, and we're applying conditions with the luminous armor, which is applying radiating orbs, and we're going to give ourselves radiating orbs by having a concentration on spirit guardians. That's not if you're using Globe of Invulnerability. Obviously, we can only have one concentration at a time, but we want to apply radiation or Radiant Shockwave, which is a 3-meter explosion of radiating orbs, which can hit targets multiple times. This gives them a -2 penalty to their saving throws, and you can get that up to a -10, which is effectively like giving your entire team a +10 to their armor class. We also got, ignore some of the armor classes that we got here, I'm going to readjust that. We also got the Reviving Hands here too, which will give Blade Ward on heal, and we're going to heal ourselves every turn with the Ring of Regeneration, so that's free Blade Ward. And then we also got on heal the Whispering Promise here, giving Bless on heal. So we give ourselves Bless and Blade Ward, and we also got a bonus action ability to apply it to the entire team or to one target, depending on what spell slot we want to use. So we actually got a lot of ways to buff our team and also protect them with debuffs. I also like to use the Adamantine's Shield here to give it so that you can't be critically hit, and when an attack hits you, you're sent reeling for 2 turns. You can also use the Boots of Striding if you got, steal them from Minthara if you're going to use Globe of Invulnerability so you don't get knocked around in it. So this actually works out really well because, as I mentioned, with the Nair Mister in your offhand, you can do the Thunderbolt Strike on the enemy, so it gets the pushback and the extra 1d8 of thunder damage. So this is a pretty powerful combination here. Oh, the Owlbear Cub. Now, I wanted to make Gale here a Sorcerer because the Sorcerer is extremely powerful. I like the Shadow Magic or the Storm Sorcerer, but if you prefer those, watch my Honor Mode build guide for the whole party because that's where I use that. I want to make this a little different. And I think actually a really strong combination is the Bladesinging Wizard added in patch 8, and it's actually quite strong in Tactician mode, and I'll show you why. So with this, we obviously want to be getting ourselves the Booming Blade cantrip there. Mage Hand is always a good one again, and Bone Chill so you can stop targets from receiving healing. We'll also take the Shield spell here, as well as Find Familiar for the Raven, the Magic Missile spell, Thunderwave for the pushback, Grease for crowd control, and either Chromatic Orb or Ice Knife if you're silenced. I guess someone on the team should have Longstrider. Now for ability scores, now we can also multi-class with this, so that's where the stats become a little bit tricky because what we can do is we can start with the Paladin, giving us the Wisdom Save proficiency, which I mentioned is a really nice thing to have, and then that also gives us heavy armor. Although Bladesinging, you can't use heavy armor, but we don't have to Bladesing if you're going to have a higher armor class and heavier armor. It just makes sense that way. We don't have to do that though, but if you were to use a Paladin to start, this gives you Divine Smite at level 2, and then you can take 10 levels of the Bladesinging Wizard, and on top of that, they can learn them from scrolls, so then you can go ahead and learn all your spells that you want. And you get full level 6 spell casting, you get the extra attack from the Bladesinging Wizard, you can cast spells. This is a really powerful combination, especially with some of the changes to haste. I think this ends up being the strongest combination. So yeah, we're gonna roll with this here, and for the rest of the points and ability scores, I guess we'll go with that there. And I'm gonna start with the Wizard, but if you want to add in the Paladin, you can add it later. You can also add in the Star Druid, which is a new class in patch 8. The Star Druid gives us bonus action attacks as well, which is kind of nice. But Bladesinging Wizard here is really strong, and I think it's just a great combination because we can apply haste to ourselves and actually get a big boost to our damage. We'll take Mage Armor and Chromatic Orb there. We'll take a Longsword, I guess, for the weapon. And prepared spells, I'd recommend having Magic Missile, Find Familiar, Shield. You can also go with the Thunderwave there. I have a bunch of extra spells that I already have prepared and learned. And Gale also can get a level 3 spell slot, so we can learn some of those spells ahead of time. That's why you can see them there. Level 3 gives us access to things like Scorching Ray and I guess Shadow Blade being a really powerful new spell that we want to have, because Shadow Blade is just, there's no reason not to use Shadow Blade at this point due to how strong it is. You don't have to use it though. You can also grab Hold Person there. Level 4 gives us access to another cantrip, and I'd recommend having Ray of Frost for the slowdown, or I guess Mage Hand, I don't know why I removed it there. Minor Illusion is great too. And then for the spells that we'll take here, I guess we can go Misty Step and Cloud of Daggers, and then we'll have Misty Step prepared here. And Cloud of Daggers is nice for guaranteed damage. And actually, we're going to want to put on, so we'll take off Find Familiar and put on Scorching Ray. Because Scorching Ray is really good. You could even remove Shadow Blade. Scorching Ray with the Hat of Fire Acuity, which we'll get in Act 2. extremely powerful. Now, this is another caster that we want alert on, so this is just the best way to go about this. Going first is huge. Level 5, we get access to Counterspell, which is actually going to be a big core principle of this, because you can use the Duelist Prerogative and get an extra attack, or an extra reaction, so 2 counterspells per turn. Fireball is also nice, or Glyph of Warding. I always just like having Fireball. Make sure that you do have Counterspell prepared, so we'll take off Shadow Blade there. Haste is also a really good spell to have. We get the extra attack at level 6, a big power spike. Glyph of Warding, I guess, and Fear. And for the prepared spells, I would recommend having, if you want haste on yourself, haste is really effective because in this mode you can do attack, attack, and then attack, attack. In honor mode, it's attack, attack, and then 1 extra attack. Big boost. So then for level 4, Conjure Elemental is a great one to have, and Ice Storm. Crowd Control, if we can go first and set up ice around the battlefield, that's really good to stop the enemies. Average Black Tentacles is also a nice crowd control spell, and we'll go with Blight there. And then for the prepared spells, we'll add in Ice Storm, and we'll also go back to have Magic Missile, and we'll roll with that. For the feat that we'll take, however, I think it's actually best to go to the increase to our intelligence. We can prepare another spell. However, you could also add in like the Warcaster there, as we don't have a reaction outside of Counterspell if you want to attack someone, and it gives you advantage on Constitution saving throws. At level 9, we get Cone of Cold and Conjure Elemental, 2 extremely powerful spells, so we want to take those. Cone of Cold's damage is insane, especially if you use the Water Elemental with your summon there. And then we're going to go with a Minor Illusion there, and then for our next spell, Hold Monster. Cloud Kill, if you have Hero's Feast, you can have your whole team hide out in Cloud Kill because Hero's Feast blocks the damage for your team. But make sure you have Hold Monster prepared because in Act 3 you're going to want it. Level 11 gives us access to Chain Lightning, Odaluk's Freezing Sphere, and Wall of Ice. Obviously some extremely powerful spells. Chain Lightning just works really well here because we can set up water. We got the entire battlefield just destroyed at that point. Circle of Death can also work well. Globe of Invulnerability, nice one. Wall of Ice actually got fixed in patch 8, so it's a good spell to have now. But I just like to have Globe of Invulnerability. And I guess we'll just go with a max out of Intelligence. I was mentioning to add in the Paladin, but I didn't end up adding it in here. It is an option that you can go with. You do lose that feat, but you get Smite. So that further boosts up the damage quite a bit. I already have a Paladin on the team, so I was kind of iffy about doing that, but the Paladin Bladesinging Wizard is a really good combo. This one just gives you straight away spells, and you don't have to worry about your spellcasting modifier. As with the other builds, there's a few ways to build this around, depending on your gear that you want. So the Hat of Fire Acuity, a level Act 2 item that's extremely powerful because you can use a single Scorching Ray, get a +10 to your spell save DC, you're never missing a spell. The Cloak of Displacement is actually really good, so at the start of the turn, you get the next target that attacks you gets disadvantage. So that's crazy, and if the target keeps missing, you don't lose your disadvantage. The Robe of the Weave is the best choice here. This gives us +1 bonus to our spell save DC, and it also gives us health back on our saving throws. We also get the Gloves of the Battle Mage's Power, because if we attack with a spell or a cantrip that uses a weapon, so that's your Divine Smite, your Booming Blade, and crazy enough, it actually counts Shadow Blade main hand attacks. This boosts our Arcane Acuity to further give us that +10, so we can either do fire damage, or we can go ahead with using the gloves here. This is depending on how you want to utilize this. You could put this hat, if you're using the Light Cleric, on your Cleric instead. And I would recommend to have it on one of these two here. The Gloves of Battle Mage's Power, if you prefer, you could go with the Gloves of Dexterity, give yourself a little bit higher armor class, or the Bracers of Defense, since we're not wearing clothing, that's a +2 to your armor class. We also get the Helldust Boots, so you can't be moved, and when you fail a saving throw, you can use your reaction to succeed, and you also get the Hellcrawler. The early game boots would be like Disintegrating Nightwalkers, or the Boots of Striding from Minthar are a good choice as well. Now, the best weapon I would say for the Wizard is the Duelist Prerogative, because with this, if you don't have anything in your offhand, which you're not going to use a shield with this, you get a additional reaction per turn. So this allows us to do Counterspell twice. That's crazy. This also gives you an option to do additional damage. You get a Duelist Enthusiasm, which gives you an additional attack with this weapon. It's really nice. However, if we want to go full crazy with our builds, you can stick with the Duelist Prerogative, but we can also use the Arcane Battery, and this will give us the more powerful version of Shadow Blade, because we can upcast that to level 6 or 5, which will then give us the 48. So it's most optimal to have 2 Shadow Blade attackers, but I did show weapons. You get the Sword of Chaos, and with this, you can actually, what you can do is you can put the Belm onto this character here now, and then on this one, you can apply the shield. So I'm just going with a few different options for gear, depending on how you like to have your characters. Some people like to have them one-handed, two-handed. Catheric Shield's nice for the bonus to spell save DC on your class there. But with the Belm, that just gives you that extra offhand, or the extra main hand attack, which is going to give us that 48 +3 psychic damage, which is just, it's nuts. And you could also, I guess, if you're going to use that, the Gloves of Battle Mage's Power stacks, we also use Gloves of Dexterity. But The rings, the coruscation ring is interesting because we get radiating orbs from Shadowheart, but this also can give us radiating orbs. It works better on this build because she's got already a few different spells that she's working with. This one at least gives you the ability to also apply them if you have different initiative. Now, the Ring of Mental Inhibition, whenever a target fails a saving throw, it gives them -2 to their mental saves for 2 turns, which is really big. And we also get the Spell Crux Amulet, which gives you a free spell, so that's also quite nice. However, earlier in the game, you can go with the additional spell Savant Amulet, and you could even use something like the Surgeon Subjugation. You get a critical hit free with the Scorching Ray, puts them out. You can even go with the Mass Healing Word to give yourself some extra heals for your team. I actually kind of like that on a caster, just to give our team 2 healer supports. And the Psychic Spark is another good amulet for the extra magic missile, and you can get that pretty early on in the game. Now, we want to have the Hell Rider Longbow. He can't use this weapon, but it gives him a +3 to initiative, so he's going to go first likely, which is extremely ideal. Now, Barbarian Throw-Zerker is really good. However, it's really good in Honor Mode too, so I'm not going to include it here. I'm actually going to include the Fighter, which got a substantial nerf in Honor Mode. The Fighter's still obviously S tier, but with this, we got a couple great options. So it depends how you want to specialize. I think the +1 armor class ends up being the best here. Great weapon fighting is also kind of nice if you're using a 2-handed weapon, but I'm going to go with the defense. We're going to use the Eldritch Knight, which means that we got some options that we have to make here. I think the best possible way is to go with a strength potion, but you don't have to use that. If you're going to use the strength potion, I would recommend a stat spread. Or if you're not using the strength potion, I would use a stat spread of this here. This at least gives you a +2 to your initiative, allows you to use constitution, and then also strength there. However, if we're going to go with a strength potion, it's actually better for us to build around our intelligence here, because this can actually allow, we can cast a few spells, a very few. And you're going to see, it's actually kind of cool how we can utilize that. So then we can also go ahead, you can put your dexterity up to 16 and constitution there, but I think higher constitution works a bit better. And we'll roll with a stat spread like this. But again, you can use the other stat spread if you want to not use a strength potion. It's going to maximize our damage quite a bit. There's a couple ways we can go about doing this build too, so it's cool. I'll show you a few different weapons. Level 2, Action Surge, extra attack. You know how good that is. Level 3 gives us our subclass with the Eldritch Knight, which got a massive buff in patch 8 because Booming Blade, which if you attack with your Booming Blade, you can then do an attack, and bonus action attack. It's actually kind of crazy. Now, I'd also recommend Mage Hand. Everyone should have a Mage Hand. You can, if you want to min-max, Mage Hands with healing potions is the best meta for heals. They do get taken out quickly, but they can heal your entire team faster than you never. They're really good. Bone Chill's nice too, though, as we need multiple options to stop targets from receiving healing. There's a couple fights in the game where that just makes a lot. It makes it a lot easier. Shield Spell, that's really great. And Magic Missile, because sometimes we aren't going to be guaranteed damage, and we need guaranteed small bits of damage. I'd also recommend taking the Find Familiar spell, because you can use this for a Raven, or you can go with the Long Strider here. We already got a Long Strider from someone else, so getting a Raven can blind enemies as well, which is nice. Level 4 gives us a choice in spell. We'll take Thunder Wave, and then we'll go with an ability score improvement. However, if we want to go with a throwing weapon, we can use the Tavern Brawler here. This is actually pretty crazy. You get a late game throwing weapon that's nuts. You see it there in Nirolna. This is pretty good. So I like Tavern Brawler. You could have put your Constitution to 17 and taken up to 18. Or you could go with, I'd recommend actually putting your Constitution to 17 at that point. I should have mentioned that a little earlier. And then you can take it up to 18. Level 5, extra attack. Obviously a big power spike, but it actually gets better because once we get to level 7, in level 6 we get another feat here. So this is a good one because you could then go, you can max out your Charisma or Constitution at 20. Or we can also go with the alert feed because again, we want to go first. The big reason we want to go first is if we get if we got haste on ourselves, that's attack. It's actually pretty nuts. We also get the War Magic here, so when we do our Booming Blade, we get those extra attack, the free extra attack, and we get level 2 spells now. Scorching Ray is kind of an interesting one. You can actually kind of use it, and Darkness is interesting as well. We're going to take Darkness. There's a couple ways we can utilize Darkness actually pretty well. There's a helmet and there's an item that we can use. There's 3 items in the game to use Darkness. We're not going to use it, but it can power up your Shadowblade users. You can also use Shadowblade too. We're not going to on this because I think it's better to use Nirolna, but it is an option if you love Shadowblade and max damage. For this, we're actually going to take Hold Person. We can actually land some shots if we got our Eldritch Strike set up, which we get soon. So this is really good. This is the expanded spell list. You only get to take one of these. You can go ahead. You can't replace the spell, but you only get one choice from these. So you have to make a very tough decision between Shadowblade and Hold Person and Misty Step. I think Hold Person is the best choice. Shadowblade is probably the true best for damage output, but We can do some pretty crazy stuff here. So what's cool about the fighters, you get an extra feat. So you can use some cool things like the dual wielder. If you want to use 2 weapons, this actually becomes crazy because you can open up some pretty fun combinations. You can also go with an ability score improvement. That's always a good choice to boost up your constitution. You get your constitution to 20 here. I kind of messed that up, but we also want to take Savage Attacker because this will allow us to reroll our melee attack rolls and use the highest damage. Kind of counterintuitive with Tavern Brawler, but we will make some melee attacks, so this can be a good choice as well. Alternatively, we can also take the Sentinel feat. This is not a bad option. This gives us some preventative damage. It weaponizes our reaction, which we don't. If you're to take the Battle Master, you get riposte, so I wouldn't recommend Sentinel, but this is actually nice because it gives us 2 tanky characters with our Paladin and our Fighter that can kind of protect everybody. Indomitable, reroll saving throws, huge. And then here we get our Eldritch Strike. So when you hit a creature with a weapon attack, it has disadvantage on the saving throw against a spell you cast before the end of your next turn. This is where it gets cool because if you've got haste, you can do an attack, and the next turn you can do hold person on the target. And if you want to take the ring from the Paladin, you can then do it as a bonus action. So you got lots of great options. Not sure why Mage Hand keeps getting unselected there, but we'll go ahead here. I guess Chromatic Orb can kind of work, or you can take Mage Armor to apply it to somebody else. Level 11 extra attack, you know how good that is. It's powerful. And then for our final, I guess for our level here, the spell doesn't really matter. You're not using it. And the final level here, you can add in a multi-class. If you want to use clothing, you could do the Barbarian. The Barbarian is actually kind of funny because you can do the Constitution Amulet. It gets a really high armor class really quickly. I think obviously the best choice is just to stick with the Fighter though, or the Barbarian. Not the Barbarian, the Fighter. I think the extra feat is worth it and the extra health that you get. And if you really want to make yourself tanky, you could take the Tough feat. This will give you an extra 24 health. And if you had your Constitution maxed out, that would have been pretty great too. I kind of screwed that up, but getting 4 feats is really nice because this opens things up quite a bit to different attacks. Great Weapon Master is good if you're going to use a 2-handed weapon, but we're not. Just pretend we have our Constitution at 19. I didn't screw that up. So this is actually where it gets crazy because we got lots of gear here that fits many different situations. I think Nyrona is the best. You can use your weapon bond, but it's actually going to come back to your hand when thrown. This gives you a melee and a spellcasting or a ranged option. I also really like Baldur's Giant Slayer. If you use Baldur's Giant Slayer with a strength potion, the double your strength modifier on it, it's crazy high damage. That's best if you're using a 2-handed weapon. I'm going to use Nyrona for the purposes of this because it actually stacks with the Gloves of the Blighter and Skies really well, because then you got the ability to apply reverberation. We also got the Dwarver and Splint Mail. I guess this will max out our Constitution here. So you can see that we have 20 Constitution. This puts our health at 136. You get up to 150 if we took the feat to boost it up even further. However, you can also use the Helldusk armor once you get to late game. This will give you the highest possible armor class of 28. You don't have to do this. This is just kind of a tricky one because it actually, what's weird is when you wear this armor, it applies your +1 armor class from defense twice. So this gives us +1 defense. You can see it there. +1/+1 defense. 28 armor class. That's probably the best way to do it. I was showing that other armor there off. It's a more underrated armor for the plus Constitution. Helm of Baldurn's great because it gives you another +1 armor class, and you also can't be stunned or critically hit, so you're extremely tanky. As mentioned, you could also swap out the Helmet of Arcane Acuity or use Shadowblade and use you can get a few different Arcane Acuity stacking items, but I don't think it's that important for us, really. We get Cloak Protection, Gloves of the Blighter and Skies, Disintegrating Nightwalkers so we don't slip, and we got Misty Step there. We also got the Periapta Wound Closure, so stabilize you at the start of the turn, and also you got Maximum Healing, which is great. Ring of Arcane Synergy, so when we do Booming Blade, we add our +3 from our Intelligence modifier to our damage, which is pretty crazy. You can, however, swap this out with the Paladin. This is actually kind of a good option to have on the Paladin because they have a +5 damage, where we only have +3, and then we can use bonus action version of... We have the bonus action way to do the Hold Person spell, which is great. Although I like having a bonus action command from the Paladin. Either of these can utilize it actually really well. And then I have the Killer Sweetheart for free crit because we have high crit damage. And then I also have the Titan String Bow since we're using a Strength Potion. And Nyrona again because it gives you a lot of boosts. And Viconia's Walking Fortress. Now on everyone else, you want to, if you can afford a Bloodlust Potion, put it on them because it's so much more powerful in Tactician versus Honor Mode, because then Gale gets a few extra attacks instead of just a normal 1 extra attack. And actually what's interesting is he's got not the greatest armor class right now. He's going to get it higher if we use the Mage Armor. But what's cool is you can also put the Helldusk Armor on him instead if you prefer. But yeah, with Mage Armor, this does boost our armor class up quite a little bit here. And you can also find scrolls of Mage Armor if you don't want to expend your 1 spell slot, despite him having the ability to replenish his spell slots. Now, another thing is we can use, I guess we can replenish our spell slot by summoning in a very special water elemental, which applies chilled on the target. So it's kind of just, I guess, the maintenance for this. You're going to use the Bladesong as soon as you get into combat. You can use your Arcane Recovery to give yourself your level 5 spell slot back, and then it's like nothing even happened. So we got our Belm there, our Shadow Blade. Everything's all geared up here. It puts his armor class 18, 28, 19, 23. Pretty tanky 2 characters, and then our spellcasts are a little bit more squishy, but we can protect them through a variety of means. Some honorable mentions for gear. If you want to roll a dark team, you can use a Steel Watcher helmet, the Eversight ring, as well. You can use the Shire Spear of the Evening if you're on an evil playthrough, and that works really well too. And we want someone with the darkness concentration, since your Warlock can thrive in darkness, and anyone with Shadow Blade can really, you can put the Eversight ring on Gale too, I should have mentioned. If you have a Drow, they get a free concentration on darkness, but personally I actually like to use the Celestial Haste on my Warlock here, because you can get 6 attacks per action. It's actually pretty crazy, so I prefer that. Alright, so I use my Elemental here to start combat. It's nice if you know you're getting into a fight, you can set up some crowd control there. Now Gale's got, this is actually great. So that's why I like the alert feeds. It's a little overkill, but we're always going to be moving first, and that's important because we can actually swap around different characters. If there's multiple targets that just need a single magic missile to take out, we can do that. And then also we'll stack up our Bloodlust potions, but this is pretty ideal because then we can start off with some crowd control right off the bat. And if we're lucky enough to take out a target, this can be really good. I'm going to put it back here so that they end up slipping, and we get counterspell, of course. And this is not ideal because this eats up his one action there, but we do have a bonus action, so this is actually pretty nice because then we can go ahead with a bonus action, perfectly balanced strike. But we also have, what's crazy is you can put items between targets, so we can actually give him the Resonant Stone there. So then now, Magic Pockets, he's giving the target disadvantage on their psychic damage, or giving them double psychic damage, so then we can one-shot him. Or I could have moved my character there. Oh, that was really close. 66 damage, they just needed 2 more to finish them off. And I should have put myself in the Bladesong too, but this at least makes him tanky, puts his armor class up to 22, so that's pretty nice there. And we also get, the target will have disadvantage on their saving throw against that. We want to set up our Helmet of Arcane Acuity here, so what I would recommend is actually to go with a range attack and the Arrow of Many Targets, because this will give us a huge boost for Arcane Acuity here. You may not take out a target, but what this is doing is giving us that plus 25 AC, so we got a plus 6 there, it's pretty nice. Now I need to take out a target, so I'm going to actually just use another Arrow of Many Targets to give ourselves that plus 10. So miss that's unfortunate. But I still was able to trigger the extra attack, or the Bloodlust Potion. So this lets me go with an melee attack here, and I guess, we could even do a spell. We only have level 3 spell slots, so you do have to be mindful of that. I should have put Vow of Enmity on myself to give myself advantage on attack rolls against every target, but you get the idea of that. We could also, we got spells, we got Booming Blade. I'm going to go against this target here, the highest target with, I'm going to eat that opportunity attack, that's fine. Actually, I'm going to use Divine Smite on this target. This is probably the best option to take this one out because I want them gone. Perfect. And then you can follow up with a Booming Blade against this target. And we also got the Deathstalker Mantle applied there. And I guess that gives us an even, we have haste, I forgot. So we have haste, Bloodlust Potion activates, we now have another action here, which is kind of crazy. So if I wanted to, I could actually drop down something like Command here, which is nice. But I'm just going to use an Arrow of Many Targets because I need this 2 health point target gone. And there we go, that chained around. That gave us our bonus to our Arcane Acuity. And I guess we still got another attack here that we can do. This is crazy. I could use an Arrow of Many Targets, but yeah, I'll just apply, yeah, that's fine. Now we got ourselves Shadowheart, and she's got insane damage because she's got the ability to max roll her Chain Lightnings, and she also gets a free one. We can't reach to give it, apply that. But what we can do is we can pop down our defense. So we got Globe of Invulnerability here. This is going to keep everyone safe and just protected. So then we can, I guess, go ahead here. Karlach will probably clean up. We're actually going through this really quickly. We got our throwing Niralna here. We can throw that. It's going to hit multiple targets there and applies the reverberation on the throw. Pretty crazy stuff. And then you can throw it again. Getting that Tavern Brawler boost the damage is quite nice. Yeah, that took them out really easily. And you know what? What's good? We can always throw that again. So the throwing Eldritch Knight is pretty crazy. It hits in a huge area of effect. There's also, I guess, a target that's kind of hidden back there that we can have a hard time hitting. Oops, I broke the mind of my team, so I lost my concentration. Our biggest downside is commands are such a devastation because the Resonant Stone can give you disadvantage on those saves. However, you have 2 counterspell users on your team. This can be really nice just to stop that. That's why the Hexblade Warlock is such a nice change in patch 8, because at least you can make Tactician runs pretty crazy. I guess we have 2 targets left. If I didn't break the mind of our team, we would have taken out everyone on turn 1, which is pretty crazy. It just goes to show how overpowered this build is. We also got that lightning there. I'm not going to use the Destructive Wrath, but yeah, 17 damage. That's pretty crazy. And it stacks up Reverberation, which is nuts. Now, I want to show off how crazy the Tempest Domain Cleric can be. I accidentally ate up my level 6 spell slot by getting counterspelled. So I'm just going to use that on a single target. And then Destructive Wrath, boom, 84 damage, insta kill. It's pretty crazy. And then we get our Bloodlust Potion. You can go with a Glyph of Warding. Upcast is 78. This is going to hit me, but that's fine. I just want to show this off. Destructive Wrath, boom, it took them all out. So yeah, that is a very overpowered build in Baldur's Gate 3. Oh, we got some more. And once again, everyone max rolled on their initiative, so we got to go first. You do have... Oh, we got counterspelled. Nice. That's actually smart. They're getting better. But we also have this perfectly balanced strike. Again, Gale's nice because he's always got that bonus action attack that's going to do massive damage. 42 there. That's pretty great. We messed up. So what we're gonna do to counter that is drop a Hunger of Hadar right there. That at least gives a crowd control on the enemy team. And then also the Hexblade's Curse you can use. You got a Flourish, which I wouldn't recommend doing, but the Hexblade's Curse is nice for the extra. You can get the Accursed Spectre to come out, which is great. I didn't even use Honor. I didn't use Action Surge yet, which is another crazy boost for our damage. The thing is, with Nyrulna, you can do so much damage just because the throwing attacks are so powerful. Setting up Hunger of Hadar will give you advantage on your attacks too. That's not ideal for me to throw it right there because you're going to hurt your entire team. But those are the... I'm just kind of showing this off because this is super powerful. You don't have to even worry about those things. If you don't like using Nyrulna as a throwing weapon, again, you can use the Baldur's Giant Slayer. That's another great option. And Shadowheart coming through with the cleanup again. The Destructive Wrath is just so good. Boom. Indomitable, Infernal Resistance. So I've waited... Oh, I didn't even hit anyone on the enemy team. That's fine. I'll just let that happen out naturally. Gale actually almost got taken out there, so we can use the Song of Defense to actually protect him quite a bit. And then we got Sentinel there from Karlach to give ourselves... We got a critical hit on the attack. Yeah, that's crazy. I was just playing kind of silly at the end there, but you get the gist of how powerful this truly can be. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hit the subscribe button below if you enjoyed, and I'll catch you all in the next video.